Okay, let's just dive straight into this explainer. You know, we constantly look at high achievers, the people who reach the absolute pinnacle of their fields, and we totally romanticize their journey. We tend to think they possess some magical secret, a hidden talent, or maybe a perfectly balanced morning routine that somehow just unlocks the universe for them. But what if our entire cultural understanding of what it actually takes to be a high achiever is completely backward? Today, we're going to deconstruct the source material to separate the myths of the champion mindset from the harsh, unfiltered reality.
There is a brilliant observation that absolutely shatters that romanticized view. People are always trying to figure out what champions have that the rest of us are missing. But the reality? Champions are actually missing something that every normal person has, an off switch. To become the absolute best, you essentially lose your ability to stop. Everything else in your life just becomes secondary to the pursuit.
So this brings up a really crucial point. We all kind of want to be the greatest of all time in our own right, but when you look at the mechanics of what that actually requires, you have to ask yourself a very serious question. Is it actually worth the extreme cost? We're going to explore what that cost really looks like and force you to reevaluate your own ambition in light of the massive sacrifices required to reach the top.
Section 1. The cost of being champion.
Look, if you are prepared to sacrifice your friends, your family, your social life, your sex life, and even your health, the likelihood is that you will still be beaten by somebody who is prepared to sacrifice even more. To beat the person who is sacrificing literally everything, you must be willing to sacrifice everything too. The only way you can win without that insane imbalance is if you are such a generational talent that your 98% is better than their 101%. But you can never guarantee that. So the default mechanism for champions is this maniacal, blinding focus that consumes 99% of their existence.
To put this into perspective, just consider the reality of Eddie Hall, the 2018 world's strongest man. He reached the absolute summit of his sport. He weighed 180 kilos. He had blood pressure that could power a jet engine. His marriage was falling apart, and he was an absent father. He retired right there on the podium because, as he said later, if he hadn't stopped at that exact moment, he would be dead, divorced, with zero relationship to his kids. Reaching the top can literally break your life. In order to beat Eddie Hall, you would have had to be willing to sacrifice everything Eddie was sacrificing. Section 2. The arrival fallacy explained.
A lot of this extreme drive, it doesn't actually come from a healthy place. It comes from a psychological void. We can define this as the hungry ghost. It's this wild assumption that if you just achieve enough, you can take that external success, grab it, and shove it into an internal void to permanently fix whatever is broken inside of you. The truth is, most high performers are driven by a deep fear of not being enough, rather than a well-balanced desire to just maximize their potential. They are constantly trying to prove to the world that they matter.
And this leads us directly to the Ferrari fallacy. It's the belief that when you finally get the Ferrari, or the championship ring, or that $1 million exit, everything will magically be fixed. But you can't speedrun through this realization. You have to actually acquire the Ferrari to realize that you are still fundamentally unsatisfied when it arrives. External success rarely fixes internal problems. The exact same drive that pushes you at 18 will be the exact same drive at 38 if you don't do the deeper internal work.
Think about how this applies to human ambition. Imagine you hike up a huge hill. You get to the top and you think, I made it. That is your local maxima. It's a false peak, because when you look out across the vista, you suddenly see the global maxima, the true highest mountain. But to reach it, you have to descend the hill you just conquered. You literally have to climb back down to go back up. For so many successful people, their external achievements are just false peaks. True fulfillment requires the often humbling journey of climbing down from the ego of your success to find what actually matters. Section 3. How to weaponize obsession.
We talk about discipline and motivation all the time, right? But they are fundamentally different from obsession. Discipline is a conscious effort. I will make myself do it. Motivation is a feeling. I want to do it. But obsession is completely different. Obsession is I can't not do it. It's this strange blend of predisposition, desire, and honestly, perhaps a little bit of trauma. But here's the thing. It is the freest motivation you will ever experience because it requires absolutely zero willpower. You are literally being puppeted by your own drive.
Notice the life cycle of that drive. Current discipline is often just the echo of a past obsession. You see someone highly disciplined, going to the gym every single day, or meticulously running their business, and you admire their willpower. But usually, that rigorous discipline started years ago as an uncontrollable obsession,
Eventually, the obsession cools off and kind of hardens into identity. But if you currently have a healthy obsession, pointing in the right direction, let it use you. It is the most powerful momentum you will ever get.
Section 4. Cultivated delusion and arrogance.
So the key here is understanding the difference. If you want to achieve the impossible, you kind of have to be somewhat delusional, because being strictly realistic will just stop you from even trying. But there is a massive difference between straight delusion, which is dangerous irrationality, like ignoring your personal finances or jumping off a cliff hoping you can fly, and cultivated delusion. Cultivated delusion is strategically overclocking your confidence. It's this intentional arrogance where you push your physical or creative limits by believing beyond your current capacity. It is well-informed and highly targeted.
A perfect real-world example of this is Ross Edgley, the first man to swim all the way around the UK. He didn't just rely on raw, blind willpower to survive the ocean for months. He used a framework he calls suffering strategically managed. He understood that the pain and difficulty were just component parts: fatigue, physical pain, ego depletion, and he treated each part tactically. He didn't just ignore the suffering, he mitigated it piece by piece.
Let's turn this into an actionable roadmap for you. You've got to manage the trapdoors. Step 1. Identify the potential pitfall. Where are you most likely to fail? Step 2. Preempt friction. If your trapdoor is eating junk food late at night, just remove it from the house so the option literally doesn't exist. Step 3. Outsource your motivation. If you struggle to wake up for the gym, hire a trainer or join a class so social pressure forces your compliance. You aren't just relying on discipline here, you are strategically managing your own compliance.
Section 5. Real strength requires vulnerability. You hear it all the time from hard-charging, ambitious people. Screw your feelings, just work harder. They push aside all their emotions just to stay on mission. But if you operate this way, you eventually have to answer this ultimate question. If you say screw your feelings to get to the top, how are you going to actually feel the success once you arrive?
This success paradox exposes a fatal flaw. Cause and effect guarantee a hollow victory here. The very fuel of emotional suppression that gets you to the summit is the exact same mechanism that denies you the satisfaction of arriving. If you completely shut down your ability to feel during the climb, you don't magically get to just turn it back on at the finish line. Success just passes right through you.
We really need to redefine what strength actually is. We so often praise suppression as strength, but it's not. True courage requires vulnerability. True courage is feeling absolutely terrified, having something real on the line and doing it anyway. Suppression is just risking nothing emotionally and feeling nothing as a result. Vulnerability isn't about crying unnecessarily. It's about speaking your truth and feeling your experiences deeply. It is the absolute prerequisite for both courage and genuine joy.
And that brings us to our final thought for this explainer. Look closely at the ambition driving your life right now. Are you just chasing the Ferrari to shove it into a psychological void? Or are you ready to embrace the vulnerability and the deep internal work required to genuinely enjoy the ride? It's usually much quicker to achieve your external ambitions than it is to rid yourself of them. But true mastery, that's achieving the success while keeping your humanity intact enough to actually feel it. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. Take this framework, assess your own path, and figure out what mountain you're truly trying to climb.